and welcome to the Winging It F1 podcast Bahrain preview. It's the first race of the season. We are all excited. I'm not going to ask for a cheer like Freddie did last time, but we are all excited for the first race of the season to see where all the cars stack up. F1 is back soon. So I am joined, as usual, by WTF1's own Freddie Coates. How are you, Freddie?
Oh, are we allowed to say that?
I'll just say what? That I'm owned?
And the voice you hear in the background there is the voice of the North, Nigel Chew, who once fractured his arm in a McDonald's. Was an interesting experience? We'll find out. Nigel, was it an interesting experience?
Yeah.
Yes, because I went to hospital because that's what happens when you fracture your arm. I was about 7 or 8 when it happened.
Did you get a Happy Meal?
Was it a really heavy Big Mac?
No, it was in the play area. Some big kid jumped on my arm, basically. And that's how it happened.
You were the 7-year-old in a play area and you weren't the big kid.
Yeah.
Coming from the man who was 7 years old 33 years ago. So
here we go. I'm ancient.
There we go. So as we've said a few times already, it is Bahrain this weekend. F1 is returning. There's going to be a whole weekend of racing for us to watch and get disappointed by and then do a podcast after, and I am excited. I hope you're as excited as me. What are we looking out for this weekend?
The Grand Prix. It's just first race kind of feel, isn't it? It's like the whole like, oh my god, I can't believe this is actually happening. I can't believe it's actually finally at this stage and we're all on zero and it's all to play for. And I kind of think once we get to the end of the Grand Prix, it will feel a bit kind of normal. But like when you have that, the first lights out, it's kind of like mad. I always get so shocked by how excited and how sort of nervous I am on the formation lap of the first race of the year, especially last year when we hadn't had racing for however long. But this one, it's just, you feel it in the pit of your stomach a bit. I do at least.
Yeah, well, I get that. I get that feeling of the formation lap. That most formation laps, so especially the first race, the tension. You know, my heart rate goes even higher than it's normally meant to, and it's already quite high. So you know, it's just that build up the tension in the atmosphere, even though it is in Bahrain, not the traditional Melbourne opener. And just seeing where the cars are at. But I think qualifying for me Saturday, Q3 is just going to be fireworks. I hope all the Mercedes drivers, the Red Bull drivers get through the Q1 and Q2 sessions cleanly, and then we can finally see what they've got when they turn it up to 11, as they call it, on the engine, the maximum performance. And we'll find out if we're set for a classic season, or are we going to be disappointed again?
Well, Freddie has wrestled away an off-camera opponent or something behind the camera. I don't know. He muted himself.
I've wrestled away a curtain because there was tons of sun.
There we go.
And it just was right in my face. And you know, I love the sun as an entity, not as a newspaper, but it was just annoying me.
Oh, you should have seen the other guy. I think I'm just looking forward to seeing where the cars kind of stack up and finally like getting a running order, because we haven't had that. We spent so long talking about where the cars are going to be ever since kind of last year. It feels like since last year's kind of silly season of Ricciardo moving and Vettel moving, you know, all this kind of movement with the midfield teams, and like we seem to have been talking about like where those cars are going to be since then. So I think for me it's just like finally getting a read on where the teams are at, because you know there's no hiding now. You can't kind of put anything down to, you know, just doing a different run plan or whatever like you could in testing. This is the acid test for all the teams, and I think that's just want to know who's on top and who's on the back foot.
Yeah, the 2021 season has been being set up since before Winging It started, frankly, and that's just mad when you think about it. You think good like 2 months before we did our first episode, Sainz was announced at Ferrari and Vettel was sacked and so on. So it's, yeah, you're right, Adam. That's a really interesting point to raise, that we're seeing only 3 teams have kept the same lineup from last year. 7 different teams with different lineups. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is, even after the first race, which we still probably won't know because Bahrain is such an unusual track with its plenty of traction zones. It's not, it's not. I'd say, something like Barcelona or Silverstone, they are more representative. I don't think Bahrain's the most representative track on the calendar. It's also quite high tyre degradation as well. So, yeah, I think it will definitely take a few races for the new drivers in the new team to get up to speed and for us to see where every car is at.
Yeah, I think I agree. That is a good point you raised, but I don't know. I just think you get to see who the faster teams and the slower teams are, and I don't think that will change drastically over the calendar. So yeah, I think it's Bahrain. It's not got that many Bahrain style tracks in this year. Over the last few years, there's been a few more, but some of the Tilkedromes have dropped out for this year. So
there always seems to be a sort of bit of a weird result at Bahrain, if that makes sense. Like in 2018, you had Gasly in 4th. In 2019, Leclerc got pole. And in 2020, Russell nearly won a race and Perez won a race, but that was obviously more circumstantial than pace. But Gasly and Leclerc, those results were done on pace. So, I mean, it's not necessarily the most representative track, but we could see some interesting results that don't lie for the rest of the season. And also, it's the first race of the season, so it's going to be unreliable as hell. You look back to last Austrian Grand Prix, 12 cars finished. You look back to quite a few Australian Grand Prix over the years, and you have only 13, 14 cars finish. Some cars won't even make the start, I reckon.
Yeah, and I think Bahrain, I'd say before the turbo hybrid era in 2014, it was a track that wasn't one of the best in terms of racing. But I think in the last 6 or 7 years, it's become one of the highlights in terms of action we see on the track. And I'd say Canada, for example, that's the opposite. I'd say since the turbo hybrid era, it's not quite as good as it used to be before. But I think Bahrain has now become one of the circuits where we see good wheel-to-wheel action due to its layout. So I think that'll be quite interesting.
I think the duel in the desert was quite a kind of turning point for a lot of fans' perception of it, really. And then it's, as you say, gone from strength to strength since there.
DRS at this track is where it's at, really. That's why it's done well, I think, is the way DRS, particularly in recent years, has been implemented. You've got it going on the main straight, and you've got it on the back straight to turn 4, then you've got it on the back straight to turn 11. You've got DRS going to 3 different types of corners. You've got a heavy braking zone at the start. You've got a kind of heavy braking zone with a really fast out for turn 4, which is actually becoming less of a heavy braking zone. You've got turn 11, which is a really fast sweeper. So you've got lots of different ways of overtaking being able to take place with DRS, and you've got lots of opportunities to return the favour from the DRS, which is interesting, I think.
Yeah, that Hamilton overtake on Vettel in 2019 when Vettel spun as Hamilton went round the outside, that was sublime, because I think the lap before or 2 laps before, he was so far back, but he knew there was a headwind. He just sent it round and nearly made it stick first time, but then he did it second time anyway. That is a brilliant overtake that I remember from the last few years.
Yeah, I remember the post-race interview on that, and there was a young girl there who had a paddock pass or something, and he just cut off the interview. Might have been with Channel 4 halfway through, and just say hello to her and have a photo with her. I thought that was quite cool. But yeah, the overtake was also pretty special as well. I think he said he looked up and seen the flag on top of the tower at the end of the main straight, and said he'd seen that.
It's mad what racing
the
drivers
headwind was there and that the move was on.
It's mad what racing drivers use as reference and stuff like that, because they pop up on the radio every now and again and say, "Oh, did I get a penalty?" And it's like, "Oh no, don't worry, it was the other car," and that kind of thing. But they've seen it on a big screen around that someone's got a penalty, or it's they got a fastest lap or something. They're like, "Oh, did I get a penalty?" And they see it on the screen. And Michael Schumacher used to talk about it. I think they used to just check on Ralph's race when he was going around the track. I think it's fantastic how much space there is. I mean, how normal they find driving a car on the limit mid-race. And I think it's yeah, I think we can marvel at Formula One so much, and we are, and we don't talk about enough how fantastic their capacity is during a Grand Prix.
100%. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that separates the great and the good drivers. The best drivers have that extra mental capacity, whereas the good drivers might not have quite as much. They have to be really intense and keep the focus just to get the most out of themselves. But a driver like Hamilton, perhaps, he can work out what's going on the racetrack and still perform at his best.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of Hamilton, he comes into this not in the best form, but in the best circumstances that he's previously come into seasons. And we've spoken, quite a bit about this before, and we'll be doing predictions at the end of the video. But I think for me, that's this, just seeing where Hamilton and Verstappen are, and as a construct of that, Mercedes and Red Bull, I think that's the battle I really want to see. Seeing who's on top in the midfield will be great, but I think, just seeing kind of whether we do have a genuine title fight on our hands is very exciting.
Well, yeah, because Nigel said a few times how Red Bull don't suit Bahrain in recent years, and it's kind of like, we're going to see if Red Bull can make it stick.
There last year.
Yeah, well, that's the only time they've got a podium really there, and if they can make that stick this year, then that's a sign of things to come, I think.
Definitely. I think I'm going to use an analogy then. So, because the midfield has been so good in F1, it's like having steak and chips for dinner. When the chips are really good, when the steak's just a bit off, and the steak is Red Bull, is the battle at the front. And in recent years, the steak in F1 has been a bit rubbish, but the chips have been very good. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I don't often have steak and chips. I would have gone for pie, but it's the point stands. Yeah, I think I get that, and I think in the midfield, I think Lando Norris is going to be someone I'm looking out for, because I think staying at the same team, McLaren are looking good. I think he could be the person to spring a surprise. He could be the best chip, like where you get a little one, but it's just like really crispy.
What I started?
It's like a curry where the rice is slightly undercooked, so the rice is just a bit too hard.
Isn't that poisonous?
No, it's like the rice is just a bit too hard when you eat it, so it's really uncomfortable to eat. But the curry tastes amazing, but you can't take the rice out because you put it with
one
the
is
curry
like
already.
Undercooked rice, and then you get food poisoning from it. But the korma was great, so
yeah.
Is this F1 weekend going to be spicy?
It's there to be made, and I didn't make it, and that's annoying. Who have you got your eye on? Each.
Ooh.
Each. We've got each of my eyes on.
Well, no, you can have both eyes on one person, but I just meant, like, what have you got both of your eyes on? And then, Nigel, what have you got both of your eyes on?
Alonso.
Very good.
I'm interested to see where Alpine lie, because they've had such a random spread of performance over testing that they could be up there on race pace. They could be way off on quali pace or something like that. So I'm interested to see where they lie, particularly over the weekend. I think we're going to see some interesting shifts to our perception in midfield performance by the end of FP3 to what we've thought from testing. And I think Alonso could have a very, very good weekend.
I think outside of the top two teams, I'm probably going to have to go with Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. I still think AlphaTauri kind of outshine or outperform themselves in testing. They won't be quite as good as they showed then, but I do think Tsunoda could be a bit of a challenge for Gasly, and I can't wait to see how he gets on this first weekend, because as I've mentioned a few times over the last 6 months or so, his ability to adapt and learn is just incredible. His rise from Japanese Formula 4, I think it was, straight to F3, straight to F2, straight into F1 in back-to-back seasons. It's just phenomenal.
His testing run on Sunday. Sorry, I just want to throw this one thing in. His testing run on the Sunday, when he was going faster and faster and faster, every lap was a personal best. better for something like 15 laps, and he's still learning, but he's learning at such a rate that he could be supreme. Adam, over to you.
He is like one of the few drivers over the last few years that has had their F4 super license points on the license that they got into F1 with. That's how rapid his rise has been. And I think seeing him and Gasly kind of where they stack up together, and obviously where they stack up with the midfield as well, is, you know, how high up there are they, or as you say, kind of have they perhaps raised expectations a bit too much from their testing performance. The team that maybe has done the opposite is Aston Martin, and I think they're probably the other team that I'm got my eyes on, because I just don't know. I kind of want to know where they're at. I think their driver lineup is one of the weaker on the grid, personally, and
I think it's questionable. I think there's question marks on it, because it can be amazing and it can really let you down. And I think, that definitely makes it a weak lineup, because it could be really great. Because same with Vettel and Stroll, as they both, like, Vettel's obviously had a fantastic career and just had a really, really dire 2020. Stroll has actually had some brilliant peaks, and if they can, make that stick, it could be brilliant. It could be absolutely fantastic, and if they really gel with Aston Martin, it could be grand. But like you say, it's just on basis of recent performance, it's weak as hell.
The inconsistency of the Aston Martin drivers. In fact, when they were Racing Point last year, we were saying how they should have been third in the constructors with Perez and Stroll. But for me, anyway, it was a driver lineup that let them down when they should have wrapped it up early. Never mind, not
by driver lineup. Presumably, you mean Lance Stroll.
Sorry, Lance Stroll. Yeah. What did I say?
You said driver lineup.
Driver lineup let them down.
Ah, right, yeah.
Well, I'm assuming it was only the Lance Stroll part of the driver lineup that you...
Sorry, no, I meant Perez as well. Yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah, I think the first half of the season last year, Perez was underperforming personally.
I know what you mean. He shouldn't have qualified 17th in Styria and that kind of thing. He shouldn't have... well, where was it? Hungary. He made quite a few mistakes across the whole weekend in a car which should have been on the podium, basically.
He did win a race, so it's not all bad.
He did. I think Perez is a driver who takes his time to get up to speed, though. I think that could hurt him at Red Bull. But anyway, Aston Martin, I think we could see the same thing here with Vettel and Stroll. The inconsistency might let them down, and I don't see them challenging McLaren overall, but they've got to be careful they don't drop to, say, fifth in the constructors due to the bad days. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also tight there, and I think between us we've listed most of the teams, but yeah, I think there's plenty to look out for, and I think we've all got our eyes on particular garages and seeing what's happened. And like you say, the retirements, who's that going to hit hardest? Who, because there will be teams that are coming, it could be McLaren that come in hot, and we think, oh yeah, they're on it, and then a retirement or a dodgy pit stop or whatever can really put pay to that. So I think there's all those intangibles and unexpected events that make the sport what we like.
If we look at teams that had the least laps in testing, it goes Mercedes, Aston Martin, I think McLaren. So there are 3 Mercedes-powered engines, Mercedes-powered teams even. They're all Mercedes-powered engines. And I can't remember who the 4th team was, but those were significantly lower. They're about 100 laps lower than the Alfa Romeo and Alfa Tauri, and those guys are running reliably as hell. So I kind of think it'd be interesting to see the correlation between what the failures are, because I don't want to doom-monger Mercedes too much, but a lot of the issues seem to lie from like Mercedes style failures, gearboxes. I think McLaren had some gearbox issues as well at one point. Aston Martin definitely did, but who knows? It's hearsay. We don't know at all. We can't predict that.
I think that's a coincidence, that, personally.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm not reading too much into that. I don't doubt for one bit Mercedes of an unreliable power unit, because we've seen from the last 7 years they've been benchmark in terms of reliability. I mean, Howdy, other than Malaysia 2016, the most famous one, I can't think of too many power unit related issues for
Perez had an
Hamilton,
ERS
Bottas.
failure in Abu Dhabi. Perez caught fire in Bahrain a couple of weeks before that. And there's going to be a few more that I can't think of on the top of my head, but I do think Bottas had about 3 or 4 engine failures last year, didn't he?
What was
They've rarely taken grid penalties though, have they? They've never got to that
That's true.
stage in terms of how bad it is.
It either
What was
conks out or it's
Latifi's-
just reliable.
what was Latifi's problem at Austria 1?
Oh yeah, I had no idea. How have you
Didn't
remembered
score
that?
points. I don't know.
I think he
I
like
know
conked out
Russell.
right
I
at
know
the
Russell retired. I didn't know.
end. It might be Russell I'm thinking of.
Russell
Yeah,
definitely
it is.
retired, but I can't remember the problem.
That's the one. I will find out now.
If it was gearbox at that point, it would have been a Williams gearbox anyway.
It
So,
was fuel pressure. So,
Okay, that's Williams level, isn't it? Or I don't know.
yeah,
anything.
Williams.
Um,
All the Williams powered cars are going to be in trouble this year.
I mean, speaking of Williams, George Russell, we've not spoken about him much since over the winter break.
Neither
what
did
do we
Drive to
think?
Survive.
Yeah, well, what do we think he has to do to get the Mercedes seat? Because I think for me, he doesn't have to do too much. As long as he doesn't do anything too wrong, I think he's got one hand on the place already.
As long as he kind of confidently beats Latifi, I think that'll be enough, really. I mean, a lot of it depends where the Williams is as well, because if we get there and the Williams is like the 7th best car, then I think he
Wow.
has to be. Well, but I'm just saying, or if it's the 7th best car, he has to be beating the 3 of the teams that are behind, or kind of be around there. So I think that will dictate it. But if we think it is going to be kind of near the back and maybe just battling the Haas, or only ahead of the Haas, I think I'd expect him to beat the 2 Haas drivers most weekends, and I think then it will come down to Latifi and what he can do there.
You're right. He's going to have a much more polished Latifi alongside him, because George Russell had the advantage, obviously, of being a very good driver, but also of having a year under his belt when he was in the car. So he really knew how to drive the car last year, as Latifi was learning all the way through. We saw he was having a couple of mistakes in practice, but he was able to put through some really, really solid races with Latifi last year. And I think Latifi is going to be a step up this year, and I think will probably be closer to Russell, but that will be because of him really knowing how to drive the car so much more now than he did last year. But I do think Latifi's not going to. I'm not saying Latifi's going to outshine Russell. I'm saying Russell's still going to outshine Latifi. All the thing Russell needs to do is not punch Toto Wolff, really, and then he's probably got the drive.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a repetition of
think
last year, to be
Russell-
honest. I think.
Yeah. Do you think Russell will keep up his qualifying record against his Williams teammates?
I think he will. I think barring any, if things are normal and there's no weird circumstances, I think he will. I don't see how. He really is fantastic over one lap. He's kind of like Charles Leclerc at Ferrari in that aspect, where the 1 lap pace is just incredible. So yeah, I can see him getting to what's he on now? Is he on 30 something? I don't know what he is.
I know Sakir kind of messed up his tilt at the record, because that's kind of how it works. But yeah,
by anything.
In terms of Williams, yeah, it'll be about 36, maybe.
Yeah. He's definitely going to get
37?
to 50, I think.
No.
Mad. That's absolutely mad. It's just such a bonkers ability just to be that switched on. I mean, yeah, I think the Ferrari engine is going to be a bit more powerful this year, so it might not show as much. There might not be as many Q2 appearances as last year, because the Haas and the Alfa Romeos might be a bit closer, I think. But it's still comparing him to Latifi, I think it will be some very good performances.
I think that's what we said at the start of this segment is I don't really see us talking about Russell that much. Like, it kind of doesn't.
Yeah.
it feels like he's not going to get tons of points finishes, and he'll probably beat Latifi most weekends, and that's kind of it. That just feels like his existence.
He plugs away at being really good, and that's
Yeah.
it. We just let George go over there and do really well, and he's reliably fantastic, and that's what you want really from a midfield. We're back market team, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd say it's almost a good thing because we all know how good he is and we all think he deserves a chance in the top team. So if we are talking about him, I guess it's usually because of a bad thing or a mistake he's done, like at Imola last year when he crashed behind the safety car. So I think if he's kind of out of the spotlight, that's a good thing. And if he, as long as he avoids not making 3 or 4 silly or major errors this year,
yeah,
he's going to be in a really good place when it comes to negotiating for a contract.
Yeah, all very interesting to follow. Any other F1 drivers we want to talk about, or do we want to move on?
Just throw Ferrari in there because obviously no one knows at all what's going on there. But I think it's going to be interesting to see where they are in 2 or 3 races, if I'm honest. I'm more looking at that as like an arc rather than as where they are solidly this weekend. I think Ferrari is going to be an interesting one developing over the season. There's not really much to add to that, I think, for me.
I think seeing where Sainz stacks up against Leclerc for me, because he's obviously come on from difficult spells at Toro Rosso and Renault, and now had 2 fantastic years at McLaren, and now it kind of resets, and that performances and beating Norris at McLaren will only go so far if he's not kind of on pace with Leclerc. So I think seeing where they stack up is, I think that's going to be a fascinating one. I think equally though, it's like Bahrain won't be kind of the be all and end all. I think I'd be surprised if he is up to speed really, this early on and coming from different setup and a different engine manufacturer, etc. So I think that'll be something to kind of watch over the first half of the season, say. But even so, that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Especially Leclerc at Bahrain as well. He's had some incredible performances there in his F2 career, in his first ever race. He stormed through the field in the feature race. He had his first pole position there, should have won his first race there at Ferrari in 2019. And I think it was last year, didn't he qualify 5th it was in the Sakir race, wasn't it, on the outer layout? He pulled out an unbelievable lap. I think he got out of the car after 1 lap in Q3 because he knew he couldn't do any more. And he qualified 4th or 5th there.
I think it was 4th on the top of my head. It was 4th.
Yeah, Bahrain's one of those tracks where it's one of Leclerc's best tracks, I think.
I think looking at Sainz, he's a race guy as well, more in my eyes at least. If you look at where he had the edge on Norris, it was in the races because Norris out-qualified in both seasons, only just, albeit. But he's going to be more up there in the races, I think, and I think that's what he needs to focus on because, like you say, Nigel, Leclerc's 1-lap pace is phenomenal.
Definitely, yeah.
Should we do some quick-fire predictions now?
Yes.
Before we move on to F2, which we will be covering after the predictions, because it's the start of that this weekend as well. Ooh. Very exciting.
Great format.
Yeah, we will talk about that. We will get onto it. But yeah, F1 predictions, winner and podium first of all.
I think I said Verstappen will win last week, so I've got to stick by that, even though as we get closer to the season, I'm really scared Mercedes are going to come up with some brand new concept.
You are allowed to swap. You don't have to
change your minds.
Like this, it's.
Bottas.
Oh wow.
Bottas, Verstappen, Perez. 1, 2, 3.
That is bold.
Thanks, man.
I'm going to.
Is Hamilton off the podium on pace or an incident?
Hey, I don't know.
I'm asking you.
All right.
You don't have to answer that, Freddie.
This is going well.
I don't know why this podium's happened.
I'm going to go Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas.
I'm going to go Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris.
Ooh, I like that.
Throw a cheeky
Throw a
podium
Norris in there.
Did you ask
For
pole
the-
position as well, Adam?
What?
Did you ask pole position as well?
Who do you think is going to be on pole position, Nigel?
Oh, right, okay.
Lewis Hamilton. I don't know what race I'm watching on Sunday, but it's going to be fantastic.
Lewis gets pole and then ends up off the podium through not bad pace and not an incident.
It could be anything. This is
It could
F1.
be an instant. It could be bad pace.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it could be bad luck. Could be like
It could
a
be bad
safety
luck.
car or virtual safety
See,
car.
Nigel agrees with me. Nigel thinks it's going to be a Bottas, Verstappen, Perez result.
Dangerous with Alonso returning. Bit of a we'll be throwing around those allegations.
Alonso's going to just. Did you see the first virtual Grand Prix they did last year with Johnny Herbert just cut the corner and just went into first? Alonso's going to do that. He's just back to shithouse the entire Formula One Grand Prix series, championship, everything. He's going to win it. He's going to just by completely messing around. Like, oh no, I'm in your way. Ha ha ha.
That's it. Not sure. That didn't sound too Spanish, but I'll take your word for it.
I wasn't really going for Spanish. I don't know what I was going for.
No. Neither do I.
Nigel, you've got enough time. Who's pole position, mate?
Yeah. This stalling was all for you.
Oh, cool. There we go.
Freddie, are you going Alonso or?
I said Hamilton.
Okay. I'm tempted
Don't
to go
have to be different.
Bottas. I don't know.
Go for it.
Verstappen isn't a very pole positiony type of person.
That's
I'll
because
go
he's not been in
Bottas.
the best car.
Go Bottas.
There we go, Bottas.
I think. Yeah. Not sure. I'll go for Bottas. Go on, lad. Get yourself a pole position. Who will be higher finishing out of Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso?
Fernando
Two
Alonso.
rookies, two young drivers coming back in.
Two young drivers.
Yeah, I
Fernando
think
Alonso.
Alonso as well. Yeah.
According to the test, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, you don't trust tests ever. Ever.
Yeah, I'll go Alonso as well then. Why not?
Will
Actually,
this two-time
yeah,
world
well,
champion do better than this guy in a worse car?
I mean, that's what you would
Based
have
on
said when.
previous years.
Yeah. I mean, you could have thought, will this two-time champion do better than this rookie in 2007? And look how that went. But anyway, they ended up doing exactly the same.
Again, it comes down to testing.
Yes. How many
Hamilton
finishes
did
will there be?
unlimited testing in that car, so he's up to pace, to be fair.
Sat there for the whole of 2006 off-season.
Wiggling it round.
Yes, that's a clip. How many finishes will there be?
16. I think it'll be
I'll say 15.
too high attrition.
1-5.
17 then. 17, not that bad. And attrition. Okay, well, those are the predictions locked in that we'll then probably forget about when we come to do the review. Let's not. Let's actually remember the predictions this year.
Right,
How about that?
I'll write them down.
Okay.
We've already
I'll leave
forgotten
the
our
notebook
championship
somewhere.
predictions from last week.
No, I haven't. I think
I have.
Hamilton and Mercedes.
So pole, Bottas for Adam, Hamilton for me, and Verstappen for you, Nigel?
Yes, yeah. I'll tell you what will be interesting while Freddie's doing that. This is going to be proper F1 nerdy chat, but I think it'll be interesting to see whether it's a one-stop or a two-stop because the tyres are harder. But last year it was a two-stop. I think for the last few years it's been a two-stop strategy in Bahrain due to its tyre wear. So whether there's a difference between Red Bull and Mercedes, one's easier on its tyres perhaps. And if Perez is up there as well, Red Bull could split the strategy perhaps or do something different. So I think that can be fascinating on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I I agree. And will you get kind of someone from the midfield, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
Sebastian Vettel or whoever, like trying to go long on, hard tyres and getting a top 5 or whatever because of it? I think that'll be a good line to follow. So yeah, that's all our roundup of the F1 until we have the quiz later on. But first, we have a look into F2 because, as we've already said, that returns this weekend as well, and it is as exciting, if not more exciting, definitely more even than the F1 season. But firstly, as Nigel has already hinted, there is a slight format change going on. So do you want to tell the lovely listeners about that?
I mean, to be honest, I don't know what. There's 3 races, I know that, but I don't know how.
I can do it. I wrote about it yesterday.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Friday remains the same. You've got a practice session and a qualifying session. Saturday, before practice 3 for the Formula One, you have a 45-minute sprint race, and the top 10 of that grid are reversed from the qualifying results. So if you qualify on pole, you will start 10th. Then sprint race 2 goes after qualifying on Saturday. And from those races, the grid is the top 10 flipped from the results of sprint race 1. Makes sense. And then Sunday morning, you've got the feature race, which is the starting grid is from the qualifying session on Friday. It seems to put a lot of onus on 10th place, which is interesting, an interesting decision. It makes sense because they're trying to get more races into fewer rounds because of cost-cutting measures, because they had F2 and F3 going to so many rounds last year. What they're having now is F2 going to some and F3 going to some, and it's F2 and F3 money is ridiculous at the moment. So it's going to try and bring that way down, which is a very good thing. And it means that the final race of the season will be a feature race, not a sprint race. It will offer more points, which will also be very good. But it is a bit like 2 reverse races and 1 non-reverse race is a little bit tetchy.
I'm just not a fan of reverse grid races whatsoever. Really, I think it only works in touring cars, but I'm not even the biggest fan of it in that. So to have 2 reverse grid races in the series that is the next one to F1, it's just madness to me. I just don't really get it. And if we qualify, say 11th or 12th, you're hindered for 2 of the 3 races, which I don't really think is right. Or say if you have a problem in qualifying and it's not your fault, and then
that was the same. That was the same last year. Last year, if you finished 9th, you were hindered. Whereas now, if you finish
problem.
Last year, it was if you finished 9th, you wouldn't get into the reverse or anything, and you'd be hindered. Whereas this year, it's only 11th, so it's more cars can be involved in that kind of situation. And if you're 11th or 12th, you've got a chance of getting to 10th, rather than a lesser chance of getting to 8th to get into the reverse, that kind of thing. So there is more option, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it would hinder 2 races, but at least you get one of the sprint races. If you qualify 12th and you make your way up to, I don't know, 8th, then you've suddenly got a great starting position for the second.
Well, the problem is there's 3 races at each venue, and there's less venues, so then it's a much bigger problem, and it's a problem. This is not the way to make it cheaper. I don't think changing the format is the best way to make it cheaper. If they want to make it cheaper, or if they want to
start a currency and peg something to the euro and do all of that kind of stuff, it's impossible to control inflation. To be honest, the best way to control inflation is
we can try.
F1 should help out, I think.
They probably should. They probably should have a scholarship scheme for positions in Formula 3 to the positions in Formula 2 and so on, and presumably positions to Formula 1 on top of that. What the PR line when reverse grid sprint races were brought in for GP2 in 2005, when it started, was that the fast drivers will have the opportunity to be in a feature race, a fast race. They've got an opportunity to qualify and show their 1-lap success. And they've got an opportunity then to show their driving through the field prowess and their racing skill. And, they're trotting that out again. I mean, it's just PR line, but that's how we've got to look at it. And we've got to appreciate the fact that we can complain about the fact these races are happening, but they're happening and we can still see who's good because the cream will still rise to the crop. top. What?
Yeah.
Cream of the crop will rise to the top.
Slightly mixed
So have a
metaphors
pop.
there. Yeah, I think it feels like one of those that if you're going from a Mick Schumacher or George Russell before him or even Leclerc before him, they've all gone from winning F2 to then being in a backmarker car. Leclerc less so, but he just totally outperformed that car. So I guess maybe it is a bit more representative of how it's going to be when they get into F1, that they're not going to be banging it on the front every time. But
doesn't really work.
That's just playing a weak devil's advocate, to be honest. I don't agree with that. But
no, I don't think you can probably. I don't think
why
anyone
we're on
does.
this podcast. Well, that's fine.
It is what it is, I guess, and
yeah,
I'm still probably going to watch
really.
it. So
Yeah, it's more. I mean, it works for F3 if that makes sense. Like in terms of it gives F3 a spotlight more so, if that makes sense. Like rather than having F3 at 8 o'clock every morning and no one watching it, you've got F3 on the features, the prime time slots after qualifying and that kind of thing, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I guess if it was me, I would just have 2 qualifying sessions for 2 feature races. That's what I'd do.
Fair enough.
That simple.
I don't know. I think I quite like the old style, but it's just, I don't know, clearly doesn't work in where they're trying to take it and trying to make it cheaper for people. But should we get onto the drivers after we've talked about the weekends a lot? People that are actually going to be driving in the weekend. There's plenty of interesting names that I think it's quite a stacked field. There's a few good drivers coming up from F3 as well. But not Logan Sargent, which is a shame.
He's got no money.
But anyway, yeah.
His dad went to court or something.
But he liked my American feeder series drivers piece, so he's a good lad. Anyway, who are we going to be looking out for in this?
I'm looking forward to seeing Oscar Piastri in the Prema, because Prema obviously are top dogs. Robert Schwartzman next to him is going to be a tough nut for him to crack, but Oscar Piastri did so well last year that I think he's going to be really interesting to see in a really good car. James Aruvula seemed to finally get on top of Formula 2 at the end of last season. Apparently he had car issues all year until he started to qualify on the front row, which is fair enough actually, because if he was qualifying on the front row when he didn't have car issues, then he's clearly a decent driver, so he could be all right in a Red Bull back Carlin. Anyone else before I hog everyone?
I was meant to talk to Oscar Piastri at Autosport International. He was showing off his Euro Cup car. Then he wasn't there because he was finalising his Formula 3 deal, so I couldn't. So that was a shame. That's my main takeout. Is the Renault Academy still running?
Yeah. Oscar Piastri, Christian Lundgaard, Guan Yu Zhou.
Yeah, I mean...
Is it now the Alpine Academy?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
you
like a skiing. Sounds like a skiing school. But anyway, sorry, Nigel.
It's all right.
Yeah, Lundgaard.
You mentioned...
Christian Lundgaard. Sorry, Nigel.
I think that's the one that I'm looking out for is the Dane.
Rest of the episode.
I don't think Christian Lundgaard was that good in 2020. I don't think he was one of the most exciting people that year.
I think he will be one of the big heavyweight drivers though this year. I think him and Schwartzman are probably going to battle it out for the championship. I think, and I love the ART lineup of Lundgaard and Théo Pourchaire, who I rate very, very highly. I think he could be a huge star when hopefully he gets to F1. So I think ART are going to have the best lineup for quite a few years, best season for quite a few years, because they've had a slightly disappointing campaign recently, or a few campaigns, but I think it's a fantastic lineup they've got. So I'm looking out for them this year.
I think the high-tech lineup will be interesting. I don't know if they're going to be good, but it's kind of two drivers that have had eyes on them for quite a while, with Liam Lawson and Yuri Vitz. Liam Lawson, I think, benefits from having an alliterative surname. But anyway, that's just my theory.
Vitz is a very important person, so you've got to throw that in there as well.
Yes. He's several.
High Tech were good last year. With Giotto and Mazepin, they had actually good pace in that car for a new team. So I think if you look at Lawson and Vips both having always shown pace when they've been in the car, Vips came in to support Dams when Sean Gelael had his injury last year, and with no testing in a Formula 2 car, ended up doing some really, really good races in the few he did. So I think Vips will be good. I think Lawson is a handy peddler, so it'd be interesting to see him. There's a lot of really cracking...
What cyclist?
It's a phrase, people say it. There's some really cracking people. Marcus Armstrong is another one that I'm throwing in there. I think he could do something similar to what Ilott did last year, where they have kind of like okay results in first season and just be one to beat.
Drugovic is another one who could do that. He's transferred to UNI Virtuosi, so he's got a bit of a better team around him. And yeah, I think he could be one to kind of look at as a breakout star. Could he be Brazil's next F1 driver? Well, I said he would be, and then Pietro Fittipaldi got a drive, so that went well. But I think he could. I think he could still take that mantle.
It's a star-studded field this year. Last year's the lineup was good. I think this is one of the best, I'd say.
I think
ever.
The issue that I see is how many F1 drives are going to be open. I think that's kind of, if you look at, I don't know, Schumacher's contracted to 2022, but you imagine Mazepin's going to be there, and Tsunoda, we all think, we all rate him, so he could, we feel like he has it within him to stay on the grid. And then you look at the drivers outside, who ex-F1 drivers who could still come back in or who could be shopping around for a seat. I think half of the seats are already locked down in terms of contract time for 2022. So I think that's kind of the main issue I see with it, is there's not, outside of maybe Alfa Romeo, there's not that many, and I guess if Vettel has a bad year, would he look at retiring? I don't know, but there doesn't seem to be that many like clear-cut opportunities to get in a seat for 2022.
I think you got that. Oh, go on for it. I think Freddie's going to say the point I'm going to say. Is it the rule changes?
No.
I was going to say. Oh, okay. I was going to say the rule changes as well for F1 next year. I think the teams might want experience and maybe continuity as well. So I think that doesn't help the F2 drivers as well.
I'm going to throw in that it really depends on the campaign. We've got so many talented drivers here that no one's going to really leap out as a dominator. George Russell forced himself into the Williams seat because he was mega. Charles Leclerc leapfrogged Giovinazzi to a Sauber seat because he was mega. Like, you got to look at it like that. And I kind of think if someone comes out from this field as fantastically above everyone, then that's kind of fine for me if other people don't get seats, really. Because if someone's just categorically better, then they deserve it more. And it depends how it flows. We obviously don't know how the F1 season's going to go. I really wouldn't be surprised if Kimi Räikkönen stays again, that kind of thing. So it's just a case of seeing how the F1 season goes and seeing how the F2 season goes. I think it's a bit early to write off chances for some of the Formula One. I think it really depends on how their season goes. I mean, Guan Yu Zhou, I think, obviously comes with the allure of a Chinese driver, but it's his third season in F2, and both his other seasons have been reasonably mediocre, frankly, for what you would expect.
And he's a Sheffield lad.
He's a Sheffield lad, so we like him. But it's that kind of thing. He needs to dominate, otherwise he's got no hope of getting into Formula One. Frankly, there's different targets for every driver.
Yeah, exactly. And the two drivers you mentioned there, Russell and Leclerc, they were mega in the first season in F2. So that's what Théo Pourchaire, I'm hoping if he can do what Tsunoda did last year and do as well as he did in his first season in F2, that's what can make you stand out. We saw with Mick Schumacher's first season, he was all the way down in 12th. Then he wins the championship the following year. But because of his rookie season where he didn't perform too greatly, we don't see him as a superstar in F1. We think he might be a midfield driver. Personally, I don't think he's going to be a world champion in F1, but if a rookie F2 driver can do really well, then that's what makes them really stand out to the other to the F1 teams, and that's where the second or third year F2 drivers, they have to win the championship pretty much.
And the thing with Teo Porcher is the way he performed in Formula 3. His first weekends in Formula 3 were basically nothing weekends because of issues out of his control. And then after Austria, he was the highest scoring driver across the season. So if you take out those first races, he would have won the title there. And people forget that about Teo Porcher because he wasn't there from the start, whereas Piastri and Sargent and Vesti were. So I think you've got to look at that for Porcher. If Porcher has a clean year, I think Nigel, you're right. I think he's going to be probably the most exciting.
We haven't talked about Dan Titton much. Are there any thoughts on him?
He's in a good car as well.
I've got literally no thoughts on him at all.
He could do really well. I think he could have a really, really good season.
Some people see him as one of the favourites for the championship.
It's like there's 8 or 10 drivers that feel like could, or not you specifically, but just we feel like could have a great season.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah,
That's
it's
exciting.
fantastic. One more name that I would just mention is Gianluca Petikov at Campos, because he had funding issues last year and won Formula Regional Europe, and then left the Ferrari Driver Academy and didn't get a place in F3, and then is suddenly turned up in F2, which with not a fantastic team, which will kind of hinder his impact. And I don't know, I just think it'll just be interesting to see where he is, because it feels like quite a tough position to be in, but equally he has got a seat in F2, and that kind of at some point last year it didn't even feel like he finished his Formula Regional campaign. So to kind of be in this position is crazy.
It's fantastic for him that he's got the drive, but it's Gianluca Petikov at Campos. It's that kind of thing. It's like, this is definitely a bedding in year to get to, I don't know, UNI Virtuosi next year or Dams next year. It's kind of like Campos feels to me is what's held back Jack Aitken, because he came into his second season was in Campos and he was fantastic, but that's because the field wasn't great. If he was in a ART or a Dams that year, he probably could have fought for the title against De Vries, I think. And I think it's Campos's kind of not necessarily going to be up there in a way that driver kind of deserves. Special shout out to Matteo Nannini, driving for HWA. He's also doing the F3 season. So with the opportunity of having split rounds for F2 and F3, he's going to do both of them. So fair play to the lad. HWA are much better in F3 than they are in F2. So I guess his focus will be a bit more there. And he also competed in F3 last year for Genza, I think. So he could be one to watch for F3, but he's also going to be in F2, so that's fun.
Just
going for both championships.
Why not? Do it.
Just don't ask about his F2 teammate. And also a special shout out to Artem Markelov, who is not in the championship after about 100 years.
I don't believe it.
He has finally left to make way for Nannini coming in. So, yes, a special shout out to him. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like such a stacked field, and yeah, it's going to be very exciting to watch. And I guess some drivers will have disappointing seasons, and that's the nature of it. But
yes,
it does genuinely feel like there is a lot of talent and optimism coming through compared to last year, where you had Joe, Eilert, Schumacher, who it kind of felt like, I'm not sure, they didn't have a great season last year. And then this year it's like all these drivers are coming through and all of them had decent seasons or show potential. And yeah, it's just a fantastic championship.
If only the format and calendar was better.
And there we go.
Fight them, Nigel. Fight the power.
Do you want to channel that emotion into a quiz?
Yes. Fight the Nigel.
The Nigel.
So, the first pre-race winging it quiz of the season, and it's the grudge match that we've all been waiting for. No one's been waiting for. Freddie Coates, voice of the South, versus Nigel Chew, voice of the North.
Voice of the Wigan.
No, in Coventry, not actually right now, but in figuratively, I'm from Coventry, and that's
Voice
in the
of
middle.
Coventry.
Yeah, it's a fight over the Midlands. Anyway,
what's the Midlands?
Who was third in Q1 at the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix?
Freddie.
Yep.
Perez.
No.
This is going to be a very long quiz. Who was? I don't know. Norris.
No.
Freddie.
Yep.
Science.
No. Give Nigel a guess and then I'll give a hint.
Okay. Nigel, have a guess. Don't get it right, though.
Hamilton?
No, he was top in all three sessions. It's an old favourite of the channel.
Freddie. Alex Albon.
Alex Albon.
Presumably he had to do a second run. That's why he's so high up.
Wikipedia doesn't specify that much. It was Hamilton, Stroll, Albon, Bottas, Verstappen.
Wow, what track
Gasly,
evolution.
Oh.
I think he qualified fourth, though, didn't he? He had a decent run in Bahrain.
Yeah. He had a podium thanks to Perez's failure at the end.
I had to look up the other day what the hell happened to Bottas in that race. He finished 8th.
Yeah.
He had a slow puncture at the second restart, so I had to then do a 2-stop. So yeah, that was weird. I completely forgot about that. Obviously, there was a bigger impact on that race.
1-0 to Freddie. Question 2. Which has the higher population, Bahrain or Oklahoma City metro area?
Freddie.
Yes, Freddie.
Bahrain.
Yes.
Oklahoma. No.
Bahrain just. It's by about 100,000, which I thought it'd be a lot bigger. But Oklahoma would be a lot smaller. But there you
the
go.
metro area of Oklahoma City as well.
But that encompasses I think it doubles the population or something.
Fair enough.
So.
I know nothing about Oklahoma.
No, I do, clearly. Question 3. Which won overtake of the year 2020?
Nigel.
Yep.
Oh, I've messed up. I've thought of the wrong thing. I've thought of the action of the year, which is Raikkonen's overtake, but it's not that.
No.
Freddie. George Russell overtaking Valtteri Bottas in the Sakir Grand Prix 2020.
It's not even the best
isn't a good overtake.
No, it's not, but it won. So.
Yeah.
And voting.
What was actually the overtake of the year? Because I'm trying to remember. There was one.
There was
about 3 laps later when Sainz did it.
Gasly on Perez for me at Spa.
Oh yeah, the Rouge one. Yeah, fair.
Yep. But hey, it's democracy. Vettel won 2 drives of the day last year. Hamilton won. How does it work? I don't know. Anyway.
He drove on the day.
Yep, that is true. Who was the last Japanese driver to score points at Bahrain?
Freddie.
Yep.
Kamui Kobayashi.
No, before you answered, I was about to say it's not who you're thinking of. But there
Nigel. I reckon it's Nakajima.
No.
Freddie. Takuma Sato.
It was Takuma Sato.
If it wasn't those 3, it's going to be no one. So.
Yeah, it could be Yamamoto, who didn't score a point ever in his F1 career.
Wasn't he in F1 before Bahrain was?
No, he was in the 2007 season.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm getting mixed up with someone.
Really?
Might be getting mixed up with Taki Inui. God.
Ahead of the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix, who was leading the championship between Sergio Perez and Danny Rick?
Freddie.
Yep.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Nigel?
I think it's Sergio Perez, but I'm not sure.
Certainly is Sergio Perez. Nigel gets his name on the board for the year.
I got a 50-50 question right.
The other 50 had been declared wrong.
Yes, yeah, on the board for the year. Will it be the first of many? Will it be the first of one? We will see. I'm not even
how
on
many
the board
boards?
yet, but
Oh.
I'm not taking part in the quiz. How many Ferrari drivers have won at Bahrain while driving for Ferrari?
Oh, Freddie.
Yep.
4.
Yes. Do you want to name them for
Sure.
kudos?
Vettel, Alonso, Schumacher, Massa.
Yeah, Massa won 2 back to back. Back to back, boy. Underrated driver, Massa. Should be a world champion.
And he's also an overrated driver at some points of his career. It's mad.
His FE career, maybe. I don't know.
Exactly.
Who knows? In the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix, who was the fastest Renault-powered driver?
Freddie.
Hmm?
Damn it, I forgot. Oh, no. I've got it. It is Verstappen. No, he retired. Ignore me. Nigel, you go.
The fastest.
Well, the highest placing.
Oh,
again.
highest placed. Yeah, both Red Bulls retired, didn't they? So it's got to be Hulkenberg.
Certainly is Nick Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
The link there is Alonso was in a Renault-powered car.
Oh,
I
So there you go.
got
He's
mixed
coming
up
back.
with Gasly, but he was on Honda Power, wasn't he? So
Yeah, just a bit. I believe that's 5-2. I might have lost count slightly, but I think it's 5-2.
has there been 7 questions?
I think so.
That is 5-2.
Can you name the 2 events that caused the 2 red flags in second practice last year?
Freddie.
Yep.
No.
Okay, Nigel.
I think one was Jack Aitken.
The Bahrain Grand Prix. Not
Oh
second.
yeah, he didn't race at Bahrain Grand Prix. That's not helpful.
No, he
It'd
didn't.
be mad if it was because of Jack Aitken.
He screwed up Russell's.
Oh, was it a dog?
It was a
Oh!
dog.
Yeah.
Yes, of course there was a dog.
It was a dog.
Was that
On
2
the
red
track.
flags? Is it the same dog?
Big dog.
No, one was
Oh.
a different thing.
Okay.
One was Hamilton.
Freddie, I've got it. It was Albon's massive crash.
It was Albon's massive crash.
I can't remember that crash.
You've
Well,
wiped
what's
everything about
called?
Albon from your mind.
Oh,
It's
was it the
cathartic
last
that you
corner?
don't remember it.
I
It was
remember.
the one at the final corner where he tried to catch it and then just booted it into the wall, essentially.
Then they clipped Christian Horner on Drive to Survive, going, "He never just has a normal weekend. Never
doesn't.
just go through practice and then qualifies well."
He does it. Although he did qualify well. We just said that.
You
Yeah.
did okay.
He crashed and then came 3rd.
In Q1. But hey,
And in the race.
okay, I'll give 1 point each for that. So it's 6-3.
Oh, yeah.
Of the 21 items listed on Wikipedia as examples of sports washing, how many aren't in the Middle East? Let's do a closest wins for this.
6.
I reckon 3.
7.
Yeah.
7.
I was running
There you
through them all in my mind, obviously.
That's the purity of sport. So that's 7-3 to Freddie. As we go on to the last question, who got fastest lap in the 2020 Sakhir Grand Prix?
Freddie.
Yeah.
George Russell.
Was George Russell first fastest lap under a minute in any F1 race ever?
Yeah.
Beating Jody Scheckter's time at a track that I can't remember.
Over a minute.
Yes. But that is all. Freddie is the first winner of the season. We'll try to keep count for this year, but we probably forget at some point. But we hopefully won't. And we really hope you have enjoyed our Bahrain preview and you have learned something about the race or about the F2 race or about both and are looking forward to it as much as we are. We will be doing a review afterwards, after the race, coming out on Sunday evening or Monday morning, depending on how quickly we turn it around. And yeah, it's going to be a lot to talk about and we're looking forward to talking about it then. But in the meantime, enjoy the race and goodbye.
Bye.